Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Sonictalk, episode 767, recording today on the 16th of August 2023. This is a podcast to do with all things music technology, synthesizers, drum machines, software, philosophical approaches to the creation and performance of music, as well as all the other kind of technical aspects to it. As it's summer, often things get a little bit quiet, but actually we've got a decent number of topics. For those of you who want to know as well, I've got a new cast. I went for purple. This is now the permanent cast. Got another 4 weeks to go, but it does mean I could just about review. I'm actually working on the Unisynth Pro X review, which will be up, well, I'm not sure exactly when, but it will be, and I'll be putting all those patches that I make on there, because it is a very patch friendly synthesizer. I'll be putting them on our Patreon, which means I can give you a little bit of a, well, that's an intro for this ad, basically. Hey, why not consider joining us on Patreon? For the price of a cup of coffee, you'll get a whole bunch of benefits. Even at the lower tier, you get all of our stuff ad-free, plus you get all the Sonictalk pre-show that we don't post anywhere else. And if you join us at the upper tier, you'll get free samples. In fact, we just posted a whole bunch of kick samples in decent sampler format, which is a really good free sample plugin format, and you can do a lot of good programming in there, and we'll be doing a lot more of that. Plus there's exclusive video, a whole bunch of other things. In fact, for our upcoming EMOM, we'll be doing 360 videos. That's the plan, of all of the performances as well, and a whole bunch of other benefits besides. And if you join before the end of the show at the upper level, you'll get your name in credits at the end of this show, as it's done automatically. So if you are considering joining us, thank you very much for your consideration, and if you already do, it's very much appreciated in these ad-free times. Back to the show. Yes, indeed. Well, that's thanks to myself for that. I would also like to point out that we're relaunching our newsletter. So if you're interested in getting in touch, there's places to sign up all over the site. We're going to be doing it once a week. It's all the usual disclaimers. You know, we're not going to sell your email addresses or anything, but if you want a little summary of what's going on, and we do this thing called Vintage Vault, which is we pick a video from the old days and represent it, and also some listening tips, some interesting music you might find interesting. I just want to say thanks to everybody in the chat. Of course, Wagyu for his moderating and some of the coding that goes on behind the scenes. Obviously, this chat includes the YouTubers, the IRCers, the Twitchers, and the Discorders. So you can all come together. Nice to see some familiar names and faces in there. Steve Elbows is there. In fact, Steve Elbows will be featuring in a kind of roundabout way in our upcoming EMOM, which is going to be, in fact, if I do that, maybe what happens if I press this button? It might be that the EMOM will show up. Maybe it won't. No, it's probably, I knew I'd never get it right. Maybe that's it. EMOM Dates, here we go. Yeah. So if you want to join us on tickets, we could be doing a live stream. But in between, we've got the visual artist. We're going to do slideshows of this really cool Mid-Journey art that he's been making on the bot that we've got on the Discord, which I should also plug. God, I'm doing a lot of plugging, aren't I? It's because I've forgotten for such a long time. So if you want to join us on Discord and maybe try that out and see some of the stuff that he's been doing, Sonic Discord, bit.ly/Sonic Discord for that. So anyway, that's a whole bunch of the housekeeping things out of the way. Oh, yeah. Here's the page for all of that stuff. I think it's this one, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. Sonicstate Live 7 Music Acts. Let's get into some introductions of people. I'm going to start with Mr. Robbie Puricelli over here, who's failed muso. Of course, he sits in front of the large S of his DX1, which he still hasn't put any coffee cups on, I'm pleased to say. And I don't know, is it working? How is it working? Failed muso, I should say before I introduce you. Failed muso writes for Sound on Sound, does the Pro Synth Network, also Gear News. I mean, a man about town. Most definitely.
Yes, I get about it, don't I? Yeah, the DS, it does work. It's a little temperamental in the power supply department, but hopefully I'm going to get that fixed. I'm going to go and see Kent next week and just get a little part from him, which should eliminate all issues. But I took it to a show a couple of months ago, and it worked immaculately. And then I got it home, and it said, "No, you've had the best out of me for a few weeks." Yeah, it's just a minor thing, but. Yes,
I imagine. It generates quite a lot of heat as well, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, it does, and it's been quite noticeable the last week or so when I've been putting it on and testing and just leaving it on for a while, especially with this heat, and I get the sun coming in the window in the afternoon.
Ouch.
It really does, it does kind of warm up, so it gets a bit Betty in here. But hey, the things we do for our vintage synthesizers.
Yeah.
People would do all sorts of things for a DX1, I'm sure. We've also got we've also got Paulee Bow, who's Mux. Yeah, Mux. Is it Mux? It's my habit of introducing everybody as Mr., which is my mistake because we generally don't have all that many women.
You should get some girls on here, maybe.
I definitely want to try that, and I do try. And if anyone is up for coming on, do get in touch privately. I really appreciate it. How are you, Paulee?
Well, firstly, I'm going to say things have been absolutely chaotic. The life of modern parenthood, you know, and my full-time job in mental health, but you know, things are actually going kind of quite well, kind of professionally. You know, I'm doing bits of videos here and there, and this just turned up today.
Oh yes, you're looking at that, aren't you? Yes.
I'm looking at that. So there's going to be a Sonicstate video soon. Sorry for anyone who can't see it properly. This is Roland's new Zencore guitar synthesizer, the GM800. So I'm going to be doing a review on that. I'm going to put it down very carefully.
It's still very shiny.
Yeah, it's very shiny. It matches my hair as well. I love it. So the thing about it is they've got a new pickup. Which doesn't use the 13-pin cable. It just goes through what looks like a normal jack cable. So that's going to be interesting. And I'm planning a little jam at the start of the review with Gaz on bass. He's going to play few bass licks. So it's going to be really good. Great. So I'm just trying to, you know, offset that parental anxiety and stress with some creative outlet, essentially.
Well,
you know,
that wise,
getting myself into
choice.
some music.
Excellent. Well, that's a really good idea, and lovely to have you. Thank you very much for joining us. And look who it is. It's only Rich Hilton. We haven't seen Rich for ages. Rich is fresh back off the road. You're looking very well, Rich, and like you've caught a bit of sun and sort of been out in the outdoors. But you've been playing gigs like crazy. I mean, all over the place. I was joking before the show, before you speak, that I can't imagine what it must be like playing chic gigs, because that's what you've been doing. So you spend all of this time basically playing happy music that makes people happy to thousands and thousands of people. I can't imagine how you'd ever be in a bad mood as a result of that, because you must just be in a state of permanent euphoria.
You try to stay in a state of permanent euphoria as best you can, and mostly we succeed. It is a great blessing to get to share happy music that people love with people who love it, and see them and feel them responding to that as it's going on. It's really it's extraordinarily satisfying and a lot of fun. And I'm proud of the band.
This has been an intense period. You've done a lot of gigs recently, haven't you? I mean, you seem to have been on the road for a long time, right?
Pretty much 3 months so far. With a 1 week break at the end of sort of near the end of June that we had. But it went pretty much from mid-May until towards the end of June. And then it went from the beginning of July right through the middle of August. And now we're leaving again on Monday to do 6 weeks in the U.S. with Duran Duran. And then we'll be home for a couple of weeks. And then we'll go to Australia and New Zealand and headline some chic gigs. So it's been a very productive year in that way. And yeah, we've played a lot of gigs and done a lot of traveling.
Yeah. It sounds really, and also I've noticed there's a few photos of you playing guitar. I thought it was just soundcheck stuff, but then I've noticed this sort of almost like back-to-back Status Quo action with Niall for a couple of numbers. Is that what's happening there?
For one song in particular,
cool.
We've added "Lose Yourself to Dance" to the show, and the song has a bunch of guitar parts in the original version, and so he had me join him playing one of his guitar parts for the performances, and it's a lot of fun. It's really fun.
Excellent. So lots of great memories you made. Thanks to Pete Peter James Stephen for the super chat. Very much appreciated there. I keep forgetting to press these, but they're back. So thank you if you have, and apologies if I haven't mentioned anything in the last couple of episodes. I think it's because there's been just so much technical stuff. I feel like I'm getting on top of it again. Obviously what you need in your life is be one arm down, move the mouse to your other hand, and then suddenly everything seems to come together. It's quite bizarre. Anyway, so let me see. I did plug our Sonic EMOM, didn't I? Which is September the 8th. There will be a live stream for that. And also, we've got all the acts confirmed. We've got battery-operated orchestra, worth the price of admission alone. Finley Shakespeare, ditto, for worth the price of admission. A great act called Barber's Green, Monojack, who, if you remember Bleep Bloop, or Beep Boop Electronics, the guy who did these really bonkers tape modules, who's from Bristol, he's going to do a set as well. Liam 182, Jim Glue, who we know as playing a number of EMOMs up north, he's going to come down, and a guy called Invisible Acid. In fact, while I'm there, I see Geosynths is in the chat, and I'd like to plug, he's got an EMOM coming. I think it's this Friday, isn't it? I think it's the 16th. So do check his out as well, because as we get into gig season again, there'll be some of those coming up, even though they're not quite the stadium sort of capacity that you and I. Wouldn't it be fun to do an EMOM in a stadium, Rich? I can't imagine. It'd be a hell of a nightmare for the crew, but it'd be good fun.
Could be.
Yes,
could be.
I'm not sure the mass market is ready for that just yet. Anyway, let's get on to some topics, because we do have some things to talk about. Let me see. I've got this first one here. Now, this is from a video on TikTok, which I downloaded. I think it's going to work, so let's see if it works.
Wallpaper that absorbs sound. Wouldn't that be something? The problem is that current sound absorbers are way too thick to make that an option. But evolution has found a way that brings this technology within reach. So over the last 60 million years, moths have evolved under the predation pressure by bats, and they have evolved this secret weapon. These are scales that cover their wings, a scaled version of 10,000 times. When sound hits them, they start to vibrate, and that absorbs one frequency of sound.
Okay, I'll stop there because he's a bit stretched, because the TikTok, it's sort of trying to fit it into the frame. But this is basically Professor Mark Holderide and a team of researchers from Bristol University, yeah, you go Bristol, just down the road, have evolved, they've been studying bats. So what bats do, they have this kind of ridiculously sort of tiny amount of scales that absorb, they vibrate and absorb multi-layer, multi-frequency sound. This is to protect them from bats' sonar, and they are developing a wallpaper, which again will be very thin and will do much the same thing with the same, so scaling it up, I suppose. It just sounds really fascinating. I know it seems like a bit of a sort of summer season silly topic, but actually something like this could make a huge difference, because up to now we've had to deal with large amounts of damping, baffles, all kinds of things, and this could really change things up. I'll come to you first, Rich. Well, because you work in studios regularly, and soundproofing is a big issue. And in fact, on your bio it says you're a studio designer as well, or on your Facebook. So I'll come to you first. What do you think about this? Could be kind of pretty cool.
Oh, sure, it could. We have to see how it sounds. We have to see how frequency specific it is or isn't. Is it broadband? Does it actually diminish all frequencies equally? Do you have different styles of this for different wavelengths? I'm curious about it. I was reading about this prior to it becoming one of our topics, and I'm obviously interested to see if you can basically hang a bunch of drapes and end up with an anechoic chamber, which is what, sort of the implication, taken to the extreme is. So let's see how effective it is.
This could stick a load of moths to your wall, which would be, or just maybe that could work the same way. I'd imagine it's going to be a bit like those piezoelectric speakers, which are sort of extremely flat and are good to a certain point, but they're not going to be able to absorb bass frequencies very well, because they're just, the low stuff it's not going to stop, the neighbours complaining about your house party. Will they, Rob? Maybe they will. I don't know. Do the neighbours complain about your house parties much?
I'd love to have a house party. No, I've been investigating like acoustic treatments because I rent my house. You see, I'm not really allowed to drill anything to walls, and if I stick things, it generally takes the paint off, and then I have to redecorate when I leave or if I leave. So something like wallpaper that it would be very unobtrusive and wouldn't look out of place at all, that could absorb it. It would be ideal for. Maybe for project studios, small things, people like normal people like us, rather than a big studio. I mean, I imagine space really isn't an issue in that respect. But hey, go nature. I mean, nature once again, coming up with a solution for something that we could actually use. So yeah, Moth Tech, go for it.
Moth tech, I like. Yeah, maybe what's actually going to happen is it'll only damp the high frequencies. I think Richard's idea about a drape rather than a wallpaper would make more sense. That would seem to make sense.
Sure.
I mean, drape sound because drapes work to a degree with reflections, but they don't generally absorb much in the way of foot broadband noise.
I've got my patent team working feverishly right now on that.
Love it. A drape would be useful for vocals, wouldn't it? Just drape it over you, pretend you're a ghost, woo, and then you've got this amazing kind of. You've got this amazing sound deadening kind of little space anywhere, because they sell those little boxes now, don't they? Yeah, which are cool, but they're still a little kind of cumbersome and stuff like that. So yeah, just get a drape, like a little cloak, and then and then that would be fantastic. Plus, it also, if you're neurodiverse, it also doubles as I want to hide from the world kind of den, as well as a sound deadening cape. So there we go. 2 for 1.
Well, if you had, I suppose you could work both ways. If it was double-sided, then it would stop the sound inside going out as well as the sound outside going in. I don't know. I mean, I'm desperately trying to find a gag about the light and stuff, but I can't think of one at the moment. I'm sure someone will in the chat room. But come on, don't let me down, chatties. Let's have something. Synth punk. I'm sure you'll be able to come up with one. Let's have a Moth based.
Didn't the drum room at the farm studios at Genesis's, or where Genesis recorded, it had a big stone wall, but when they didn't want that reverberation, they literally closed a massive great pair of curtains over it, or drapes for our American cousins. So yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, well, the heavier, I mean, if you've got really heavy drapes, they'll make a big difference. I mean, and particularly that sort of level of reflection is gonna work. But I also wonder, I mean, because as speakers become more DSP oriented, I mean, like I've said before, I've got a pair of these IK Multimedia MTM little desktop ones. And before that, I had a set of Genelecs, which are quality speakers, but in an untreated room just sound terrible. Whereas these sound really good, and they kind of sort of compensate for some of that stuff. I suppose you can't compensate for reflections, and they're not going to soundproof. I wonder if you could got a speaker that was soundproofed. I suppose if it had a very tight sort of focal point where it didn't go any further, which is essentially what they're doing in large format festival rigs, aren't they? They focus so that you don't get so many complaints from the neighbours. The sound is very much focused just to the people that are listening, and you don't waste anything. I guess you must come across this all the time. I wonder if it's viable to do it in speakers, as it were.
I believe it's been done in speakers to the extent, if I understand them correctly, the Key KII 3 speaker performs some kind of self-aware analysis from the speaker itself that identifies it in a space according to certain rules that it's measuring for, and that improves its compatibility with any given room. It's almost like a self-analysis procedure. Genelec, I know, allows that to happen with surround rigs and various other things. I've heard the product of that, and I know that there's software you can buy with microphones and stuff to try to do it in your own space, but I don't know how similar all of that really is to what we're talking about here. But there are speakers that purport to do that. I think the Key is the most the one I know of the best, and is probably the highest end one that seems to be doing that. Well, Genelec too. is doing this.
Yeah, I mean, as with all of these things, I mean, we've talked about this before with DSP speakers. They can sound great and they can do all sorts of stuff with time aligning and phase aligning all the speakers, but it's the through latency that is an issue. If you're playing real time into them, it's fine for a mix where you're not actually performing any elements of the mix live to time. Sometimes they can introduce a latency as they figure this stuff out, and some speakers are better than others. I couldn't speak for the keys, but I do know that Ty did a whole bunch of tests, and some he found he couldn't play. The latency were prohibitive for him to be able to play to, whereas some were better than that. And you know, there's the Trinov monitoring system and all that kind of. There's all sorts of ways you can do this. I just want to quickly say thank you. It was Jamie. I missed it. Jamie, that's Synthpunk with nothing, but thank you very much, Synthpunk. I was going to say, Jamie just said thanks for the plug for the what am I trying to say? The EMOM. That's right. Yeah, there we go.
Love the Devo hat, by the way.
Yes.
Love the Devo hat, by the way.
Excellent. Okay, well, anyway, we'll crack on, but I think this could be interesting. I mean, I think the answer is going to be some sort of combination of modern sound techno. I mean, because I guess manufacturing these things, I mean, they look a little bit like feathers, these things, and they've all got to be different shapes and sizes so that they all sort of work on different frequencies. I think that was the gist of how the Moth does it. They're all different sizes so that the sound just stops and doesn't bounce back at all across the band. So there's not even a ghosting of images, but of sonic images. But in terms of in bat frequencies, that's a very, very, I mean, it's a wide frequency band, but it's very, very high frequency. So it's a lot easier, I suppose. Let's just have a little word from our friends over at, I don't remember which one is which. What is it? UVI. Let's say hello to UVI. Discover the FX Bundle by UVI, a value pack collection including UVI's entire classic effects line: Shade, Plate, Sparkverb, Dual Delay X, Relayer, Rotary, Phaser, Taurus, Drum Replacer, and the all-new Opal, a modern emulation of the iconic optical compressor, including stunningly accurate models of 7 different units. UVI FX are crafted to the highest standards, delivering versatile, high-quality sound shaping tools powered by advanced DSP. Introductory offer currently available. Learn more at bit.ly/UVI FX23. That's bit.ly/UVI FX23. Once again, we thank UVI for their sponsorship of the show. Always nice to get a new face in, in the ad roster, particularly in these times. Okay, right. So what are we going for next? Well, we can't really escape. Well, there are several elephants in the room. Not people in our panel, I'm suggesting, but in the sort of potential topic list. But here we go. This is. I mean, AVID sold for 1.4 billion, or are being sold. It hasn't gone through yet, but they are going to be sold to STG, which I'm trying to remember what that actually stands for. I can't recall, and my mouse has disappeared. Where's it gone? Come back, mouse. There we go. I can scroll down a bit. Let's have a look. STG. What does STG stand for? I'm trying to remember. Symphonic Technologies Group, I think it is. They're kind of well, it says, I mean, part of the tagline is, comes back into private ownership, but it's not strictly true because they're a VC company, so they presumably have shareholders. It's a wholly owned. They will become wholly owned, and STG will do whatever they see fit to, I guess, recoup some of that $1.4 billion, which is a considerable chunk of change. And as we've seen with AVID before, I mean, I made a few allusions to this. I mean, AVID's Pro Tools is huge and continues to be one of the kind of the standards of the audio industry, particularly in post and certainly in a lot of recording environments. And Media Composer, which used to be the bee's knees when it came to television and film production, not so much. I mean, they've lost a whole bunch of that stuff. They've also got Sibelius as well, which is, again, one of the few dedicated. So I suppose those two things are the jewels in the crown. But, I mean, 1.4 billion is a lot to recoup. I suppose what we wonder is, what happens next? I mean, it is a bit acquisitions and mergers, I know, but nonetheless, these things are going to impact a lot of musicians. I'll come to you, Paulie, there, because you seem to have a. I mean, do you use Pro Tools? Is it something that's part of your canon, or are you just kind of elsewhere?
Most of my university work was done on Pro Tools because we had a lab full of Macs all running Pro Tools. So we all like learned to that standard. And I know that it's something that's still, you know, as you were saying, is very, very popular in certain environments. But as for Media Composer, I've followed that on and off throughout the years. You know, initially it came out in roughly 1989, was it, for the original Macintosh?
Could be.
That's why I know my vintage computing. See, that's why it interests me. This story. But yeah, today the competition is so fierce, isn't it, in that video production landscape? I mean, it's DaVinci Resolve for most people I know who are doing video. It's Resolve. There is no other kind of even anything near, because of the model is largely, it's free and just pay a little bit if you want extra features. You know, that subscription model, I think, has really whereas you'd always have to kind of pay quite a bit for Adobe and things like that. Do you know what I mean? Unless you were in education. So essentially, I don't know. Essentially, I'd be interested to see if the code base for Media Composer could be, you know, add some crazy new features and maybe some AI stuff and things like that to make it compete again. Maybe some fresh blood and fresh investment. You don't think so?
I think they missed the boat. I think when AVID was bought, I think they jettisoned a lot of developers. So they focused on the cash cows, you know. I mean, because the thing with production houses, that, you know, like most creative environments are quite conservative with a small c. They don't want a massive change. They don't want to have to completely change their workflow across maybe 20 rooms or studios or whatever. So they relied on that to a certain degree. I don't know what the model is for Media Composer. I mean, Pro Tools, the subscription, they made so much money during COVID. I mean, even though everybody was bitching about it, they really did. You know, they made a lot of cash, which has made them very attractive to this stuff. So I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting. I know, Rich, you use Pro Tools or have used Pro Tools. I remember when we first, you know, were introduced, you know, that was your modus operandi in a lot of the work environment. Is that still the case, or are you sensing that people are moving away from that as a platform in Pro Studios?
I don't see people necessarily moving away from it. I see people adopting other ways of working who are coming into the realm of the professional world now. So there's such turnover now, and there's such generational turnover, that I think that Pro Tools is really well entrenched. And I think a lot of people are very worried about what's going to happen with regards to development. And I do know that in the last year or two, they have done some significant development and fixed some long-standing bugs that have been plaguing people and really annoying people. So even while they've been bought and sold up to this point, things have continued to move forward. Now, what does that mean with STG? I don't know. But some part of me is holding on to some notion of hope that they'll sell the software side of the thing, and maybe even the whole thing, but, you know, all of what used to be DigiDesign, which now includes live consoles and high-end storage devices and all kinds of other interface devices. Like, I don't know exactly where that begins and ends, but at the very least, I hope that somebody will be developing this software into the future, because there is a giant user base out there. And sure, there are tons of great solutions for any kind of audio production or DAW production work that anybody wants to do. There's lots and lots of great solutions in which you could substantially do anything you would be doing in Pro Tools if you wanted to start from there. So it's not like we don't have tons and tons of full-featured software options available to us in the world. But I think that because it's so deeply entrenched in the professional community, it'd be nice if they either develop it or sell it. Just sell that, you know, keep the rest of it and just sell that.
I wonder though. I mean, because that's kind of the jewel in the crown, isn't it? I suppose. And I guess the thing is, I don't know. I mean, just to interject there. I mean, the point, as the world moves towards, or much of the DSP world is going to go, how can we take advantage of this fantastic new DSP and processing on the Mac M1 on the Mac, the native Mac Silicon? It kind of goes against the model that AVID have always had, which is selling you the hardware to run their stuff on as well for certain situations. And I'm sure there are many cases where that is still the only viable option, but it's going to be a tough sell, I think, in going forward.
Well, everybody seems to be moving away from that model, including UA, who based their entire enterprise on the thing to start with, and now has made a move to be removing their software from the hardware dependency part. As it relates to AVID and Pro Tools, I don't know what their business model looks like over the last few years, but my impression in general came to be that their live sound console business was some of the most vibrant stuff that they had going, and that the Pro Tools software side of it and the hardware that supports it, first of all, it's no longer tethered to their hardware, so they have to sell hardware against their competitors. And secondly, they what was my other point? I lost my train of thought there. I don't think they want to I don't want this thing to die on the vine. I don't think it really should, and I don't think it's likely to, but I just don't know what the solution's going to be. But they can't just let this thing die. I mean, they got to continue. There's such a giant user base. What I was saying is, I don't know what percentage of their current business is Pro Tools, and to what extent the market is sufficiently saturated with the software side of the thing that there really isn't that much money other than the subscriptions, which is a lot of money. But
that's a lot, That's the big one. That's the big.
But I don't know where that sits compared to console sales and the other things that they're doing.
I don't know. I mean, I'd imagine subscriptions is probably the biggest chunk of the change. I don't know. I mean, recouping a 1.4 billion of investment for any company, particularly a VC company whose job it is to recoup and make money as quickly as possible, you would think is going to be, you think maybe there's going to be some big changes, because their core is not software for creative musicians. It's just data analysis and software analytics. So, very different.
Well, the purpose of any acquisition is either to grow your business organically by adding that company's benefits to, your existing company and grow that way, or it's to, to buy and sell and make a bit of profit in the process and keep the bits that you want and get rid of the bits that you don't. I have heard a rumor, and it is just a rumor, that they are planning to spin out Pro Tools and push it out as a separate thing, whether that's under their own ownership or the ownership of an investor. That's a rumor that's going around. I don't know whether that's just speculation, but it would make sense, as Richard was pointing out. It would make sense if only to keep that going to support what is an entrenched platform. The thing is, there are so many options these days. And Pro Tools and AVID as a whole, I mean, who've been hawking themselves around for a few years, they've fallen behind. And I'm hearing, people saying that they've ditched Pro Tools in favor of X-DAW, whatever it might be, because it suits them. But there's just so many more options these days. And the one thing you can guarantee about being an industry standard, if your product is an industry standard, the one thing you can guarantee is in a few years' time it won't be. Because somebody else will come along with a much cooler, smarter idea, and you're going to have to work twice as hard to, do that. So it's, everyone keeps saying, Pro Tools is the industry standard. It was, maybe not so much as it used to be. So if they want to maintain that level, they're going to either have to invest in it heavily, or maybe, cut that cord and let it happen, in its own little environment. But it's a name that's been around for years, and love it or hate it has been there for the reason that it is good at what it does, or has been. Anyway.
I think personally, I mean, if you consider, most of the big studio visits that we go to, we went to see UA at Abbey Road, whatever they've all got a load of Pro Tools hardware. That kind of tracking session, when you've got 60 musicians or an orchestra or whatever in the place, you're not necessarily going to be running it on a Reaper session, on something which is sort of do you know what I mean? There's a certain level of perceived reliability, whether or not that's true,
Yeah.
I couldn't say because I don't really use Pro Tools, but for big recording sessions where you've got multiple interfaces, multiple tracks, you want the hardware. You're not going to go, well, I can aggregate my 2 USB devices and we can plug that. You forget that. You want really hardcore, reliable, whatever the bus is that they use these days. You want all of that stuff, right, Rich? I mean, that's got to be the key for a lot of this stuff. That's where they have the kind of primo position, and that's why they're in all those studios, right? I mean, that's why they're
right. And what I'm hearing from people I know who have their carbon interface running successfully, that there is really nothing else that compares in terms of throughput and convenience aspects of the workflow.
Sure.
That there's, according to them, and I haven't used one, so I'm speaking on behalf of others. According to them, the workflow is unbeatable, and that there is nothing else in the industry that's going to work like that if that's what you need to be able to do, and if you can afford it, because it's not cheap. It doesn't come cheaply. It can come cheaply, but then you don't get those advantages. You just end up with a normal kind of...
Well, you have a mix system. A mix system is a different thing to a tracking system. Is like that moment has got to be captured. You better get that right. Otherwise...
Right, and the large tracking system, as you point out, the large tracking system has to be able to work reliably across numerous interfaces, clocking properly together and everything else. So, yeah, it's a pretty strong market for them, and I really don't hope that they sell something or do something with it, because I like the idea of them selling it, actually.
I have a thought. Okay, so their background is analytics and data software manipulation. So what would happen if, the usage of their systems somehow gets pulled into some, meta database somewhere, so that there's some stuff that gets embedded and it gets tied in with the whole ecosystem of making music, embedding metadata, rights tracking, all of that kind of thing. I wonder if they're looking at a much bigger picture than we're even even thinking about. Or do you think that's just too much? I don't know.
Well, I kind of like the circular idea because TDM was time domain multiplexing, which came from telephone systems. So if it were to go back into some sort of data processing domain, at the end of its life cycle, that would be some kind of bizarre, circle.
I mean, they run on Ethernet, don't they? Those carbon interfaces. So they run on Ethernet.
They're called Cat 6 or whatever it is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that. I mean, again, I don't have any need for that sort of thing, but I think maybe yes, those prestige studios who need those multiple tracking situations, they don't have many other options. So, but there aren't all that many of them. They're just the ones there are the big names, but as we know, studios are not in the ascendancy at the moment. So I'm not sure how big a market that really is. I mean, how many Abbey Roads, how many places are there? What do you reckon? If we said, let's conservatively say there may be 5,000 studios that use that kind of stuff, and that's probably a high number. So I don't know whether the revenue is going to match up to the 1.6 billion or 1.4 billion that they're going to need to recoup. Plus, they paid a 20 or 30% premium on. I think the company was valued at 1.2. They paid 1.4, so it was a 20 or 30% share. So they've already got to make 30% plus whatever it is they want to make in terms of profit, and that will happen quite quickly. Anyway, I guess that's a bit inside business and maybe not so interesting. Perhaps a good point to have a word from our other sponsors, iZotope.
Transient shaping sounds complicated, but is it? I wanted to explore this powerful music production technique that sometimes gets forgotten about. With transient shaping, you're able to shape and process your sounds, and there are plenty of situations where you're better off reaching for a transient shaper first, even over EQ and compression. This simple but effective sculpting method is great to keep on hand in your mixing workflow.
iZotope have a whole bunch of excellent tutorials just like this on their YouTube channel. To get a discount on their software tools, go to iZotope.com/Sonictalk and use the code SONIC10 to save 10% at checkout. Once again, we thank them very much for the support of the show. Back to you. Back to me. How meta. How incredibly meta. Anyway, yes, thanks very much to iZotope for their continued support.
She seems good and knowledgeable. Should we get her on?
Yeah, it would be great. That'd be really good if I could. If we could, maybe I'll get in touch with iZotope and see if she's available. That'd be awesome. Right. Okay, let's go. Well, we're going from one extreme of the market, 1.4 billion, to well, what is it? It's I'm trying to think. It's 29 quid. So let's see if I can find that one. So that'll be this guy. Stylophone Beat. Hey,
yes.
It's a sort of cheap and dirty drum machine with a stylus on the piece of string, like all the Debrec stuff. They're going back down to their roots, which is kind of cheap and mass market music stuff. Oh, Rich is jamming up a storm there. Nice one. I don't think it does that, unfortunately, Rich. I think that would be maybe considered false advertising. I would just like to have a little bit of a disclaimer here. Say, if you buy this, it won't do that, but it will give you. What does it do? It's got something like four drum samples. They're not user samples, and 4 bass samples, and you could loop them up and have a bit of fun. But it's like literally cheap as chips. really kind of very, very affordable, and they've gone straight just for that lo-fi thing. And I'm sure they will do incredibly well. I mean, I didn't really look because they did have the Gen R8, which is quite a highly. I think it was limited. They only made 500 of those, which is more of a sort of analog synth. It was very angry and loud. And then they did the Gen RX1, which is more like your traditional stylophone. I just don't know how much people are going to go for this, but it's a name that works. You look like you're handling something that may be from Debrec there, Robbie. Oh, wow.
This is, I guess this was the first one they ever did. It's Stylophone. It's Debrec, and I just remember I was in HMV in Oxford Street, so many years ago, because that's not there anymore. I think it might be coming back. And there was a whole stack of them in the middle of the floor, 1999. And, it does the same thing. You tap on there with a stylus, and there's a little memory in there, and the ring around the edge does something, as I can't remember what. And there's a tuning button on the back. I haven't got any batteries in it because I haven't used it for years. But it's not like it's a new thing. But, this... it's a stocking filler for the studio geek in your life that you can't think, you can't afford to buy what they really want, so you just buy one of those.
That is so right. That is so correct. Sure. Yeah, that's hilarious. I suppose
he wanted an Electron. He got a Stylophone.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Granny. That's really useful. It is kind of landfill.
We have an Octatrack at home.
Yeah, I suppose it is kind of landfill. But I mean, obviously they're going pre-sales, and they will do a load of pre-sales, and then presumably they'll fill the container. The container will hopefully make its way through the Suez Canal without any upsets, and we'll all get them in time for Christmas. But that's very fragile, but I'm sure it will do well. I don't know. I mean, was Stylophone big in the States when you were kind of a lad? I mean, because it was TV advertisers. It was it was huge here.
I know, and I think this thing is a perfect Christmas gift. I'm like, Merry Christmas. Is the first comment I have is what a brilliant idea. What a great time to release it. What did you say? 29 quid? Is that what you said?
Yeah. It's like literally.
It's Merry Christmas all day long. I'm telling you.
3 drinks in a bar.
If they market it right, this could be like a great, great thing for Christmas. What a great gift. As Robbie says, for the people who wish you bought them something more expensive.
Something else. I really wish you bought me something else. That could be the show title or some derivative of that. I don't know. Paulie, I'm hoping that this somehow can be subverted into something really useful.
Sure.
Imagine if it became the next TB303, but at £29.
Yeah, something like that. I think the bending potential is there. So I think we're going to see a few people buy them, open them up. See if you can add CV Gate or something to it, and just go to town. But yeah, I think that I've had all 2 of the previous ones, not the expensive one. They did a proper
Gen R8. Yeah, the R8. Yeah.
All right, but I had the 2 cheap ones, and they were really fun to just play about with. So yeah, I think this is going to be a winner. And if Teenage Engineering made it, it would have been a grand.
That's true. Well, think about it. The Monotron, the Korg, the Monotron, those little guys, they were 50 quid. They were a bit more expensive than that, weren't they?
Yeah.
But a similar sort of fairly crappy construction. But the thing is, I guess you buy. So first one to get hold of one and sample it and release it as a sample pack is basically I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to pre-order one, and I'll make sure that we put it out on our Discord, on our Patreon server as a free sample pack of eight whole samples. Anyway, I don't know. It seems like a lot of fun, and if you want to check it out, I mean, basically just head over to I think it's it's stylophone.com. I forget where it is. There's probably a web page for it. Where is it? Just a Stylophone Beat. Let's see if I can find that. Oh, I've lost my mouse again. Here it comes. I've got too much screen acreage. Let's see. What does this one say? This is stylophone.com/beat stylophone pre-order. Yeah, there you go. That's about as much as you're going to get. Okay. Well, also, I suppose in the kind of lo-fi sense, and I know this didn't really make it into the topics, but I'll throw it in there just because I can. There was this guy, which is the Sonicware Liven Lo-Fi 6. Which is a limited edition 500, and if you want an authentic, go Rich. If you want an authentic 6K sample engine, can't imagine why you would, then go for it. This seems to be the thing. I'll let Rich play this out. Nice. Nice one, Rich. Thank you very much. I don't know, Robbie. I'll come to you first on this because I think you tossed this into the mix, and I know
I did.
The Liven stuff. It's interesting. For some reason, we haven't reviewed the Liven stuff, and I don't know why it is. It just always seems to be a kind of it misses somehow, misses our schedules, or we can't get But you've looked at some of their stuff, and
yeah, I've
it's got better
apart from this one.
It got a lot better, didn't it? Because I think the OS to begin with was quite challenging, but now they're really starting to get their stuff together.
Yeah, because the Livens don't have a screen other than a 3 or 4 digit LED, character display thing. So it is a bit menu divey without, sort of being able to see what you
shifty.
do. So it does. Yeah, it's a bit shifty, and then there's overlays. I think the first 4 of them had an overlay, so you'd put it into a mode and you put this overlay on, and of course the problem is that you'd lose the overlay. Maybe it's just but. On the other hand, they are really, really great little machines that do a very specific thing. So there's the FM one, there's the 8-bit one, and there's the Texture Lab, which is the granular sampling one, which is fantastic. And then they brought out the Lo-Fi 12, which was 16-bit 12 kilohertz. So it had that really kind of crunchy sound that is a thing.
S900.
Yeah, exactly. And then this thing drops completely out of the blue, and they're doing it limited 500 pieces, and it's only available in perfect circuit in the US, although they went to great lengths to say they will ship worldwide. But I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world, but here in the UK, you buy something from perfect circuit, it's $70 for them to ship it to you in the UK in the first place.
Oh dear.
Then you've got your VAT at 20% on top of that, and then you've got your sales, your customs duty,
import duty
to go on top of that, and all of a sudden it's kind of double the price. And I'm terrible. I'm a collector, so I like to have the whole thing. I won't be able to get this one because it's just not financially viable. But they took out the 12-bit, the 12 kilohertz. They put in the 6 kilohertz, and apparently they can't fit both in, because a lot of people were saying, why don't you just update the firmware on the 12 and have an option? But apparently you just couldn't fit it in because it's a pretty small platform. They've also added this tube effect on the Lo-Fi 6, and the color scheme slightly different, but essentially it's a Lo-Fi 12 with a couple of changes in it. But that said, it's a very limited market in terms of who would want to use this. However, the guy Chris Dodsworth, who does all of their demos, he lives in Lincolnshire. He does, as well as demos for various people, he does film for low budget movies. And currently he's working on a low budget horror movie, and he needed something that sounded like it was coming through an old transistor radio. and this was just perfect. It's that sound. So, if you have a very niche sort of requirement, this will fill it. But I imagine that this will be something you buy, you use, you put on the shelf, and you just drag it out on those one or two occasions that you might need it. But they make some great stuff. I just question the judgment of producing a limited thing in a single territory that makes it a bit difficult for everybody else, because it instantly generated a bunch of typical internet bad feeling, which was a shame.
I suppose. Just a quick one here. Di Stanton says, "Can I make this super chat? Can I make this provisional on nobody mentioning AI?" Well, you could, except I just now have mentioned AI, so I suppose I do apologise, but I'll take your money, thanks.
You fell into his trap.
Rich, are you? Is there a 6K sampling situation you've been hankering after all this time that you can't do in a plugin that you might feel you need this for? I can't think of. It's great for I suppose actually some things that square wave bass waves sample down almost like chiptune stuff can sound really good in it, but it has a very limited reach.
Wouldn't you like it on a switch?
Yeah.
In other words, give me the exact same device with a switch that goes from hi-fi to this, so that I have a choice. Especially for what is it, $300,
$300.
Yeah, $299. Yeah.
It's as Robbie points out, it's an extremely niche need. It is got a certain romance to it, and it actually looks like it might be fun to operate, though they didn't really feature that in the video so much. But for a product like this, I want to have fun operating it. So I want to see that it's fun to operate. Assuming that it is, I can sort of see it again as the $300 Christmas gift version of what we just talked about for 29 quid. But I just would like a switch that makes it go hi-fi. Like, even if it just removes filters or whatever, but give me this sound on a switch. Don't make me marry this thing for $300.
Did you just use the word lomance, which
Did I say lomance?
Lomance, I just thought that was a great. It's like the romantic notion of lo-fi. I just thought that's absolute genius.
Yeah.
If you
I
meant
didn't
to
say that deliberately, but
oh well, it just comes out of you, Rich. You can't help yourself.
I'll take
It's like the zeitgeist. Nice one, Rich. I don't know. I'm sensing, Paulie, that this you may have pre-ordered.
I haven't pre-ordered actually, but it was tempting because I love the color. I love the 6 kilohertz. Mind you, by the way, 6 kilohertz is nothing really. If you want to totally destroy your audio, sample into one of these at like 1 bit. It's like 1 bit audio, and it modulates it through like a PC speaker sound. And it just totally I'll send audio later. It totally destroys anything. But yeah, I'm tempted. The thing is with these devices is the kind of experimentation, just bunging a sample in and messing with it. Do you know what I mean? It's not the kind of sampler you'll spend ages making pristine multi-sample banks for. It's something that you will just use for a bit of inspiration and stuff like that. So I think it'll sell well like the one before it. And I do like 6 kilohertz crunch. My favorite sort of thing is around 16 kilohertz, though. That's my sweet spot. That's most of my Amiga music is done at 16 to 28 kilohertz. So this is a bit lo-fi, but I think it'd still be really cool to have.
Well, back in the day when I was doing sound for CD-ROMs, we would do 8-bit 22. 8-bit 22 was hi-fi, and then 8-bit 11 was the one, and that's what they used to use for kind of very bad answer phone. And this is even lower than that. But surely, isn't there a possibility? Couldn't you just make a box that has like an in and then an audio out that's just got a crappy D2A on it, and so it could do it real time?
There are.
Surely there must be something that would be cheaper than this.
Yeah, there are quite a few solutions if you just want like a downsampling DAC.
Downsampling DAC. That sounds like a yoga position.
Yeah, maybe I should do a video on how to like scuff up your audio.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
The great thing with different approaches.
the great thing with the Livens is they are a little groove box. You know, you can sit with that, and you can put things to and create a nice little thing, which you can then spit out. You know, if you want to. As an audio track on something else. They're just great fun tools. And I also think that, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole lo-fi thing is a bit popular in Japan and the Far East. Which is, and given that Sonicware are Japanese, that they're sort of playing to that market maybe. But it's fun, you know. So I got the Lo-Fi 12 and messed around with it, and yeah, it's kind of nice. And you know, do you remember Jyoti Mishra, who did White Town, Your Woman, which was a massive #1 single, and the entire vocal was that kind of lo-fi radio telephone type sound, and it fit, and it works really well. And I heard it the other day for the first time in ages, and I still thought, what a great song that is. And it did it all in his bedroom, and I don't know how he got that lo-fi sound. Obviously, it wasn't one of these, but it has a quality that, you know, it's not consistently used, but when it is and it's done well, it sounds nice.
Yeah, well, no, that's fair enough. I mean, so yeah, do check it out. That's the Liven Lo-Fi 6, which is a derivative of the Lo-Fi 12, powerful 4-track sequencer, 12 types of effects, tube mode, and ultimate retro 6K hertz sampling. If you're in the UK, UK might be a bit expensive, but in the US, order through, I think Perfect Circuit are probably importing a container of them. Once again, we do hope that that Suez Canal is going to have a lot of pressure on it come Christmas time. I think they're going to make sure they've been dredging it well, and they've made it wide enough so that boats don't block it. Saw a great documentary about the Ever Given, actually, how that happened, and it was quite fascinating.
Cool.
And it's terrifying what that happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's really got nothing to do with anything. Well, I suppose it is music tech in a way, because I bet you there was some music tech held up in that queue of containers that was waiting to get through. That meant, I mean, they were focusing on stuff like kitchen equipment, but I would love for them to have talked to a synthesizer manufacturer and say, yes, we have a whole container full of Volkers. But anyway, they didn't. So, I was going to get a question. I mean, look, there's another elephant in the room, which I know wasn't in the topics, but a certain German or a Philippine-based manufacturer, Behringer, have been doing a lot of contentious social shit posting, frankly. I think it would be fair to say, kind of upsetting lots of people, and it seems to be working really great wonders. It seems to be working wonders. I mean, but there's been a number of things, and so this is a question that I'm going to attribute to Nick Howes, because he basically answered it in the question. Thank you very much to this. So this is a question. So recently online, comments recently online seem to think that influencers are not realistically reviewing products after being snide about some manufacturers or too positive on some. This has been long with the criticism magazines with advertisements. What's the panel's thoughts? I should qualify this, because essentially Behringer basically said none of us lot will review their stuff because we don't give it to them for free. From my point of view, and Luke Pop said, and they mentioned Luke Pop by name, I said, he basically posted a thing saying, no, it's got nothing to do with it. It's the fact that your practices I don't agree with, which is perfectly entitled. I charted in and said, yes, I feel much the same. And I do feel a little bit uncomfortable giving them more publicity, because it works a treat. They're really getting it out there. But I suppose if we pull it back from them and maybe bring it more into the fact that online, you know, reviews in general, you know, it's such a complicated thing. I mean, how do you draw the line between, well, I do this for a living, or I'm just doing it for fun, or somebody sent me this for this? I don't really know what the question is. This has been a long-time criticism of things with advertising bias. I mean, yeah, everything's like that. I suppose that's the thing. Robbie, I'm going to put you on the spot, because you're involved in publishing, and you know what, you know, the dance that's done. It's a complicated thing, and not all that straightforward.
No, I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't publications, either online or in print, that do insist on you taking out some advertising in exchange for a favourable review. I've never come across that. You know, I work for Sound on Sound and Gear News, and it's never a thing there. In fact, I had a conversation with an owner of a printed publication, a very esteemed printed publication, who said, we'd love to review their stuff. We don't require any advertising. They just refuse to send it to us because it's not it's not what they do. And that is the thing that they want to go at it at a different angle. And, you know, fair fair play, do it. They did the whole thing at NAMM, didn't they, a few years ago? Instead of being at NAMM, they did an event like 50 miles away. Fine, if that's what you want to do and it works for you, excellent. But don't throw around accusations, very broad accusations at the industry. This industry has got some incredibly knowledgeable people like yourself, Nick. You've got people like Robin Vincent, Gordon Reed at Sound on Sound, and a whole bunch of other people who have impeccable integrity, do not do anything for money or backhanders or advertising or anything like that. Their views are well respected and trusted. And if you want a balanced review from someone, then there's plenty of places out there. The whole thing about Behringer saying that they'd have to pay or they'd have to take out advertising to get a review is quite frankly rubbish, for want of not using extreme expletives. It is just rubbish. Yeah. Yeah.
I suppose I wonder then, should we be, rather than expecting manufacturers sending us stuff, we should just buy it? I mean, the problem is you can't often buy it. You're being asked to review something that's not generally released, so it tends to be sent to you. I don't care whether or not, I don't want to keep the stuff. I mean, I've got enough synthesizers here. I don't need the gear. It's not a motive for our sort of thing. Once in a while, I'll go, I'd really like to buy that. I loved it so much. I'd like to keep it around. Sometimes you might see things that have been here for ages. Today, I've just boxed up the drum logue and the Volca FM2. I mean, I've had the Volca FM2 for what, 2 years, and it's been sitting here waiting for them to ask for it back. It's gone back, it goes back. But you've probably seen it on the shelf, thinking, I bet you got that for nothing. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, I suppose in a perfect world, we would all be just doing it for our own basis. But then, how do we, as entities, make money? It's through advertising and through those sort of things. So if everybody took the same approach, then there would be no media at all, because somebody, or the money would all be made in endless ads that are on, interrupting your YouTube videos or whatever. So it's complicated, and they're playing to the gallery a little bit, the conspiracy theorists, and they're doing it very well, and it was working. But it's not that straightforward, and it really,
you know this better than anyone else, because you've been doing this for a long, long time. That you do reviews of gear that and everybody respects what you do, and they know that what you say is what you feel. You've reviewed something very honestly. You are impeccable in your integrity. But you do that. You are highly respected. Everybody says, I'm going to wait for the Sonicstate review on that, on whatever, and you do that because it draws people to your site, whether it's the YouTube page or whether it's the Sonicstate website, and you have to draw people to your site to look at the adverts, but you don't have to do the good review to get people to. It's kind of a chain of events, and you have to be a respected website to draw in the audience who will then view your advertising and hopefully generate you some revenue, so you can then carry on doing what you're doing. And unfortunately, the other thing that comes with this is, if somebody sends me a product to review, and I'm sure you're the same as well, and I've had conversations with others and they agree, if somebody sends you a product and you absolutely love that product, what are you going to do? You can't not be enthusiastic about it. So, I've been called a shill for so many other companies over the years because they've sent me stuff. I really enjoy it and I think it's great. So what am I going to do? I'm not going to sit there, well, it was all right. Sure. And if something's bad, I know you definitely do this. If somebody sends you something and it's bad, you think, oh my God, I can't use this. You speak to them and say, look, you've sent me this. I can't get this to work. It's not doing very well, blah, blah, blah. Is that a problem with the firmware? Is it a problem with the design? Tell me. And a lot of the time they'll come back to you and say, yeah, look, it's a bug. We know, we're fixing it. So you'll work around that. You'll work with them so that when you do the review, it's as honest as possible. And, I've reviewed things unfavorably. I won't mention names, but that company didn't ever send me anything again. So either they didn't, thought I was, not worthy of reviewing their stuff, or they just didn't like what I said about it. People get, but also the thing is, this business is, and most businesses are built on relationships. And if you make that relationship really difficult by telling the wider public that you're all shills and basically crooks, then you don't have a very good relationship with that company, right? So how do you fix that? I mean, I've spoken to, I will let other people come in and say,
check. But I spoke to Behringer, a couple of years ago, and I spoke to the guy in the UK. I forget the guy's name. And he said, "Oh, I'd love to send." And it's like, well, the problem is, mate, I can't. I don't feel like I really want to be involved because you've done all of these things and done some pretty bad stuff. And if I do that, then I'm sort of forgiving it and saying, oh, that's fine because I just want to review the latest synth from you. And I don't feel that way. I want to try it. So it is complicated, but I can see it looks like we're punishing them, but they've made it very different. It's a company with a face that's hard to like, shall we say. It's that sort of scenario. Anyway, sorry, Paulie, I'll bring you in now.
Hello. So it's interesting for me at the moment because I am a person just starting their kind of internet famous career and I've got my first ever piece of equipment to review, this lovely Boss GM800.
Yep.
And essentially, it was quite thrilling going through the whole, speaking to Roland Boss's UK European manager and them saying, we'll send you this. And I was going, I was really having an out-of-body experience. Was like, this is super exciting. But it is kind of terrifying, because I've already spotted a few things with it that are
as
slightly lacking.
Yeah. And you will point.
Just by reading through the spec and asking them too many questions in email. Does it do this, this, and this? I think there were some areas where firmware will improve it, so I'm going to bring them up. But I'm going to, be fair and essentially I already know that the Zen Core engine sounds, well, let's not say objectively good. It sounds good to me, because I'm used to the old JV and XV series. So I know that Zen Core is something that I dig. So I think I'll give it a generally favourable review. But yeah, it is going to be the kind of thing where are people going to think I'm being too unfair? Are people going to think I'm being too, favourable? And I guess it's just something I'll have to feel out after each one.
It's a dance. It's a dance to a degree. I mean, I'm not one for saying I think this is absolutely terrible, and it's I try and use more. Just general language. I don't try. Anyway, sorry, Rich. I know this is probably not your normal kind of topic, but yeah, it's really, it's kind of, they're making it so. They bring it.
I can't address myself to Behringer because I haven't seen any of the communications that have been described. So I don't know anything about that. But I do know that your reviews are really, really well balanced, and I really enjoy them, and they're very informative, and they don't tend to take a strong position on something. And I think I've even seen situations where, and I think this is the fair thing to do, if you're reviewing a product and you really don't like it or don't like something about it, you should go to that company and say, I'm reviewing your product and I really don't like this thing about it. What do you have to say about that? I mean, how can I not be unfair to you without lying to the public about what I think about this thing? Do you agree with me that it doesn't really work very well in this way, or do you stand by what you're going to do, in which case I'll be as fair as possible? So there's a conversation to be had as a professional where you're about to go online and tell people that this thing is a piece of, and they deserve a chance at the very least to respond or to try to make it better.
Well, and there's also the situation is like, I mean, I don't want to spend my time reviewing things that I think are rubbish. I mean, it's a miserable thing to do, and then have to think, because if you can't get enthusiastic about something, you can't find any good in it, or it's broken, or it doesn't work very well. It's very disappointing, and especially if you've got all the way down the line and you're into filming, and then you find this one thing that it's on the list. I'm going to check this out, and you check it and you go, "Oh my God, that's terrible." I've been in that situation a couple of times when I've just gone, I can't review this without basically completely trashing it because it's not very good. So I suppose I'm guilty to filtering to that degree because I would rather not post that review. I'd rather not bother to put the effort in than just say it's terrible. Unlike sort of 80s music reviewers in the NME and whatever who made an art form out of being snidey and snarky and stuff, which is fine. I mean, it's just not the way I like to do things.
Right. That's why I think giving them the option to respond in advance of the publication is is a professional way of dealing with it, because then they know you don't like this. They know you're going to say you don't like it. If they stand by it, then they stand by it, and that's their business. But when you don't tell them and it looks like a hit piece, and then it's, did we give you the gear or whatever? I don't even know what this conversation is about with regards to Behringer. Do they not want to send people gear for review? Is that the issue?
Well, they say they won't send people. They say that people won't review their gear because it's not sent for free. They made a statement about it. And then in 2 lines later, they say, we will send free gear to people who are demonstrating it or tutor. And it's like, well, what's the bloody difference? It's the same thing. But ultimately,
are they afraid they're not going to get their $300 synthesizer back?
I don't know.
Is that really the problem?
Maybe.
It's a principle.
The thing is, a $300 synthesizer is not a $300 synthesizer to that company, whoever the company might be. It's $150 or it's $100. And when you weigh up the cost, yeah, exactly, yeah. And when you weigh up the cost of advertising against sending a free piece of gear to a reviewer somewhere, it's way cheaper to do that. Word of mouth marketing is a well-established thing. And the reason companies love it is because it's way cheaper than getting an ad company to put a big campaign together to go into print and online, etc., to plug your company, when you can send it to an enthusiastic person, like Nick or Paulee, and who can do a video on it, and people trust their point of view and they do it. And I also think that, not reviewing something that you really have a problem with is better than actually giving it a really bad review, because I think, if Nick doesn't review something that I would have expected him to review, chances are he's probably had it, doesn't like it. And so I'm thinking, okay, so, there's nothing from Nick. I'll take that as read, that maybe this isn't quite what it ought to be.
Well, maybe I just, I can't review everything. I'm not,
No, exactly, yeah.
There are plenty of other people who do great work out there. I mean, So it's
silence can be a powerful thing. Just saying nothing is sometimes more powerful than being nasty. Or whatever. So it's, like I say, it's a thin line, and we tread it, and we try and be as honest as possible, and as faithful to our readership as possible. And so I can only speak from my corner that I have never worked for anyone who is either paid for an advert, or paid for a review, favourable or otherwise, or who has, there's been some sort of contract involved. It's like, here's the gear, go ahead and review it. And the reason they send it to you is they probably know that you are going to be quite objective about it. So,
well, I should also point out, I mean, we don't charge ever for editorial stuff. I mean, we do charge for product presentations. If you want to come here and show us your stuff in our studio, we charge for those. We charge for sponsored videos, and we say that they're sponsored videos. And that's something that I think a lot of this stuff came up a couple of years ago where it wasn't very transparent. And I hold my hands up and say, we didn't, but I don't think there was really we knew. Now, anything that, if there's been any kind of, money changing hands or agreement, it's ticked. It says and that's so as much as we can do in that situation. I mean, aside from that, I guess we're trying to make a living. We're not a non-profit organisation, much as Behringer like to think that they are, but they're not. They're a $2 billion company with many employees. So let's knock that one on the head. Anyway. Thanks, Nick. You really gave us a lot to talk about. But I suppose the thing is I felt very uncomfortable about being silent about it. But I don't want to use Behringer's Facebook comments or anything for this to happen, so that they get a load more publicity out of it. It's not. I'm trying not to amplify it. I feel like I have to somehow defend myself, or we do, because of the allegations that are thrown around. I think they're very, very considered. I think it's been done and it's working for them, and that's fine. But I choose not to deal with that if I can. I'd rather just not deal with a company that's like that if possible. And that may change in the future. I'm not saying they make bad gear. They make great stuff, and it's very affordable, and the whole democratization of stuff is great. They also do some terrible things too, but they somehow get away with all of that, which is fine as well. I'm not like on a soapbox about it. I just wanted to put my position on. So maybe we should consider shutting this down and getting back onto happier days and happier times. But thank you very much, everybody. I know, Robbie, what's next for you? I guess you've got a show coming up on Friday, and you're reviewing. Got anything in review review land?
Show on Friday, yeah.
All Behringer gear.
Oh no, I have got. I've got a thing. It's too far. It's a guitar pedal thing, but it's for Ableton Live, and it's for triggering loops. So there's multiple pedal things.
Yeah, you showed
on
it
there.
last time. Actually, somebody asked
Yeah.
what that was called. What's it called?
Hang on, it's called Looper for Live, I believe.
Looper for Live.
Go and grab it. Yeah. Oh. It's this thing. Looper for Live Mark III. I think there's been a Mark 1 and 2, obviously.
Nice.
But you just connect that via USB, and then you can fire off 4 different loops off the bottom. You can set off scenes and can flick through scenes and do all that kind of stuff.
So it's a foot controller,
LCD screen.
Yeah.
It's a foot controller for looping with Ableton Live, and a review of this, and the guitarist guys were like, "It's not really because it's Ableton." And I was like, I'm fairly new to Ableton, but hey, him for a penny. So yeah, I've got that to look at. So I'm hopefully going to do that, and then I'm just writing seminars for the seminar for Synthfest in October 7th. So 40 years of the DX7, but I will be taking what they call the YCAMS rig, which is the TX816, the QX1, and the RX11. And demonstrating how in 1984 one person could make multi-track music with just these 3 boxes, which was rather cool. So yeah, I'm taking some time off. So yeah,
Sweet.
Cool. Well, that sounds good. Paulie, what's next for you?
I have been editing a real deep dive look into the treasures of the Roland V-Synth. Because I've talked about that synth regularly on Sonicstate. People are probably sick of hearing about the V-Synth. So I thought, let's do a video. And I think it'll be probably at least long, just going through all the different oscillator types and stuff like that, accompanied with various noir videos of, me being projected on a building, dancing and stuff like that. Lots of pink light. It's going to look
that
quite
sounds
cool.
like the ideal video, ideal magical synth adventure video. Perfect.
Definitely.
Look forward to that. Okay, and I guess you've got a bit of time off. Are you back on the road again soon, and back into the fray, as it were, back playing?
Yeah, we leave again Monday, and
Wow,
we play on Tuesday in California, and then it begins again.
Wow.
Brilliant. Well, it's been lovely to have you, Rich. It's a far too irregular occurrence when you're working like this, but I totally get it. And have a great time while you're on the road, and hopefully we'll get to see each other in person sometime soon. I do hope so.
I hope so too, and thanks.
So that's it for this week. Thank you, everybody, very much. Also, thanks to all the chatties, all the people in the chat room, Geosynth, Paul LeBlanc, even Synthpunk, who seems to cause a scene wherever he goes, but I think he knows what he's doing. So that's it for this time. We'll see you all next week. See you later. Bye-bye.